So, today we're going to spotlight on our final category in the annual awards, the NPCC Innovation and Digital Awards, which took place in October last year. And this is an opportunity, another example of example of that fantastic work. And importantly, this is a reminder, your final reminder from us about the last opportunity to get your nominations in for this year's awards. So here's a word from our police sponsor, Chief Constable Rob Carden.
Hello everyone, nominations are now open for the NPCC Innovation and Digital Awards. This is your chance to highlight how technology is transforming operational policing. So from better intelligence to faster decision making on the front line, digital innovation is changing the way we protect the public. If you know a colleague or a team leading that change, please nominate them. Let's make sure that people driving real operational change get the recognition they deserve. Thank you.
So that's the boss out of the way. Let's get into today's focus. And we're going to be looking at Devon and Cornwall Major Incident Training. Today we're joined by Kane Fowler from Devon and Cornwall Police, and Kane's going to take us through their award-winning entry in the longest title ever, the Excellence in Training Talent Development in Digital Data Science and Technology category. We are thinking about a new name. There's a new name for that this year, but the focus will remain the same around developing people and capability. So Kane, thanks a lot for joining us today, and could you perhaps start off by explaining the problem you were trying to address?
Sure. So the problem we were trying to address and the where it's come from, it's kind of two places. Partly this is driven by the Manchester Arena inquiry and some of the recommendations from the inquiry, particularly recommendation 50, which talks about commanders being trained using high fidelity training. So my Assistant Chief Constable Glenn Mayhew and my Chief Inspector Julian Pisani, who is now retired, recognised between them there was a gap in command training and policing. In specialisms such as firearms or chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear or public order, there are bespoke courses that commanders go on that are accredited that train them how to command those incidents. The same thing doesn't exist for your average response inspector dealing with a flood or a helicopter crash or something doesn't sit in those specialisms. And that's a huge gap. Most people maybe will have had a day's Jessup training, and that will probably be the most that they've had a command training, and be dumped straight into dealing with a major incident with all the considerations that come with it. So my team were basically tasked with creating a course that would fill that gap. So we built 2 days of theory, and then we built a day. We wanted a day to test the commanders in that high fidelity sort of training, and that's when we then started looking at using virtual reality to create virtual experiences people to go through to command instance and have that practice of running an incident and giving commands and getting feedback from it.
And I think that's a really interesting point, is that we do train and we drill really well for the big major incidents. But in force, when I was back in force, we used to have this term mini majors. And this is just the mistake that we make. We need to still train for the major incident protocols for the things that don't quite score up to the full level. So perhaps you can take us through the approach you took and why virtual reality was the right solution in this approach.
Sure. So the thing we wanted to achieve is that experience of being the commander, having a bit of pressure put on you, having to make decisions, having to liaise with other agencies and all the stuff that happens with that. Running a major incident exercise is very expensive, but the time that needs to be put into it to get all the different agencies together, get all the boots on the ground, secure a venue, etc. I've been involved in running a large-scale public order major incident training where we did a multi-agency stuff, and it took us months to plan, and it took a huge amount of effort to do it. And the problem with that is that you've got 100 boots on the ground, say. In that exercise you run, you might only get 1 or 2 commanders get a chance to actually test their skills and do any commanding. So we were trying to work out, well, how can we give people that experience but not have to plan loads of big exercises? And that's where we then started looking at virtual reality. And we initially went to the fire service and looked at what fire service do. They use a system called XVR on scene, which is provided by a company called LearnPro as part of their kind of umbrella of different stuff. It's used a lot by fire service already. Most of the fire service in the country already use it. So we went and looked at what they did, which we thought was really good and had potential, and then we've then modified it slightly for how we wanted to use it. So what we now have is, having done their 2 days of theory, where we'll talk about things like command structures, we'll do a refresher on Jessup, we'll talk about recording and auditing, all those sort of things. We then put them through a day of virtual reality scenarios. So I'll talk through the operational one, and then I'll talk through the tactical one. So the operational one, we have them using a virtual reality headset. So XVR is, how I describe it, is basically like a toolbox. It's like a sandbox that you can put stuff into. So there's lots of stuff already pre-built. So the things you're seeing on the screen, the various models of the ambulances, of fire engines, they're all already in there. You just drop them into the scene and organise them how you want things to start. Then once you then hit play, you can move those things around inside the environment. What that allows us to do is respond to directions from the commander. So they've got the headset on and they say, right, I want a cordon put just there, I want that vehicle moved there. We can do those things, and those things, the environment can react to them. It's me as the operator reacting, moving them around. For me, I'm basically like playing a computer game. I move things around and for them as they start giving direction. So we have 6 people go through each day. So we have 6 commanders get to go through an incident, which takes about 45 minutes by the time they've been in the headset, given some initial actions, had a bit of a debrief, then had a chance to run a Jessup meeting. So 6 in a day. So it's labour intensive in terms of there's not that many go through, but it means that all of them get a chance to be front and centre, have a little bit of that pressure, and feel what it's like to be in command. And because we're looking at inspectors and above, generally it's smaller numbers, so it makes it more feasible. What we didn't want to do is have this really kind of amazing experience that's really impactful, but only 3 or 4 people in the class get to have it when everyone's just watches. So we want to make sure everyone got a chance to go through. So that's one of the investment we've had from our force to allow us to do that. So they've got the headset on, they are seeing in every direction, they're seeing the virtual environment. Then we as the trainers then role play the various different people they'll speak to. So on the top picture on the right hand side, you can see, and actually at the bottom you can see a Jessup meeting going on. So in the virtual environment, the person is seeing, to the left hand side, they're seeing an ambulance commander, they're seeing a member of the public maybe they've called in, they're seeing a fire commander. We then go and stand in those same places in the real world. So they're getting a mixture of the virtual environment and the virtual sounds like sirens and rain effects, whatever, but they're also getting live voices talking to them. So the role head can feel more natural, and we have a script that's kind of very kind of bullet point. Let's talk about this thing and this thing. So then they go through that, and it all take turns to go through having the headset on. As you can see, those at the back who aren't in the headset can see what their colleague is doing, so they can learn vicariously through what they're doing and as part of the debriefs. So we run all 6 through and give them a chance to really test their skills and test the things they've learned on the first 2 days in a slightly more pressured environment, where they're really in it. I was sceptical, if I'm honest. I'm a gamer in my spare time. I love this stuff. I was sceptical, will it land in policing, especially inspectors and above who maybe have been in a little while, could be a little bit cynical. Is this going to work? But we've had people have really got into it. They've really enjoyed it. Once the headset's on, it takes about 30 seconds to a minute for them to really be in it, where they're reaching for radios that don't exist, they're stepping out the way of vehicles that aren't there because they get into it. You might think looking at the flat screen, oh, it's a computer graphics, but when you're in it, it really is immersive, and it really takes people into the scene.
And perhaps you could explore some of the scenarios you developed and how it works
Sure.
in practice.
Sure. So we've designed 6 different scenarios at the operational level. And for those scenarios, we have a bus crash, we have a helicopter crash, we have a flood, we have a tanker that's gone around, like the Napoli that happened in our area, we have a terrorist attack. So the scenario plays out where we'll give them a little bit of a brief. This is what you're going into. We'll then put them into the environment, and I give them a minute to look around. Just get your bearings, see where everything is, have a second to think. When they say they're ready to go, off we go. And often it's a police officer. I'll bring the first officer over to them, say, and then one of us, we stood there in the real world. Hi, sir, ma'am. This is what's going on. What do we do about this? What do we do about that? And then as the scenario progresses, I will drip feed in the other agencies. Problems will start arising. Issues start coming up. One of the things that we used that we based on a real life scenario is a fire where there's an electrical substation underneath that potentially needs to be turned off. If that gets turned off, though, that then has a knock-on effect of knocking out power for several miles for potentially all of the day. And those considerations around that, how that works. So those are our different scenarios. Having then gone through those initial actions, giving all those sort of things, I want this done, I want that done, we will then pause, take them out, and then have a little debrief. how are we getting on so far? And at this point, we'll take them through creating a working strategy, which I'll then put inside the environment for them to look at. We'll then put them back into an JESIP meeting, and I'll bring the JDM up as a aid memoir for them, and I'll put their working strategy in there. And then they run for a JESIP meeting, again, with the people in the right places to work through that process of leading a JESIP meeting, using the JESIP model, using the JDM, and to work through the problem, basically. Then we'll take them out, have a group debrief, and then we'll switch over, the next person will go in. So we'll get through those 6 in a day.
And when we were talking about this webinar, you mentioned that it's not just VR using Microsoft Forms and ways to gather information from others whilst you're doing the learning, to learn from each other.
So while I was conscious of, as we were designing this, and as we've kind of done it more, what I was starting to see in the class is those that went first are starting, as they went on, to then start losing interest a little bit. They're maybe on their phones and maybe not paying much attention. So I was trying to think what could be beneficial for them to be doing while their colleague is in the headset. So one of the things that at the parallel we had feedback from people was, I'd really like more practice creating a working strategy. So what I did is put the 2 things together, and at the beginning of each scenario, everyone that's not in the environment scans a QR code and goes to Microsoft form. On that form, I've listed a set of threats and risks for them to risk assess. They then grade them low, medium, high, and then also write a working strategy they submit. Then at the end of the session, or the end of that scenario, we'll do a debrief and we'll look at, as a group, how did we risk assess that? Actually, lots of you are saying, or most of you are saying this is high, but a couple of you are saying this is low. So we've got a real difference there. Let's have a quick chat about that and how that kind of, what are our thoughts around why we're doing that and why we're doing this. And then I'll also look at their working strategies. It's anonymous, so I don't pick on anyone, but I can look through and go, great, you're kind of getting the idea. What I found that's very, very beneficial for is they're getting a lot of repetition of building working strategies, so we can iron out some of the issues. And the common issue working strategy is people start putting what they're going to do rather than what they're trying to achieve. So they'll start talking about, oh, I'm going to do a methane report. I'm going to do this. That's not a working strategy. We're looking at that bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve, like saving lives, prioritizing casualties, safety responders, that sort of thing, not how you do that. So we can iron that out. And that's been quite beneficial for people to feel they're involved through the whole day and not just watching something and then sitting back.
And I think that's what helped your awards stand out, your nominations stand out. That it wasn't just about a single piece of technology, it was about an integrated digital approach to the training. So an important part of obviously any major response incident leadership is the multi-agency coordination. And you've developed some interesting approach in that with the VR on that as well. Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, so at the tactical level then, what we do at tactical is they have something slightly different. They're sat back, and our tactical commanders would be remote from the scene. So there, as the last slide you've seen, you're seeing CCTV feeds, drone footage, that sort of thing, feeding in. They then have an open Teams meeting, and we give them a list of people that want to talk to them from the different agencies. So, a fire NILO, an ambulance NILO, someone from local council maybe, for them to prioritise who they want to talk to. And then where possible, it's not always possible, but what we try and do is get our colleagues from other agencies to come in and role play their roles, which adds so much extra value, because then we start hearing little anecdotes from our colleagues in fire and ambulance that we just wouldn't come up with. As an example, one of the scenarios talks about they potentially need to close a road. And the decision they could, they can't, that's up to them. But if they do close the road, the fire commander said, well, do we know if we've got any vehicles on there that are carrying livestock? And we as police were going, well, why do we care about that? The fire said, well, actually, the movement of the vehicle is what keeps the cattle cool in the vehicle. So if the vehicle stops, you've got about an hour on a hot day before you can start cattle dying, and you're going to need to move those vehicles. Something we never would have thought of. So these little nuggets are coming out from the other agencies. And the second part of the tactical command is, as you see on the screen, we've got a TCG, a tactical coordination group. This came about through various iterations. Initially, we had them in a headset with a virtual boardroom in front of them, and we tried it, but we found people were struggling to read the agenda inside the headset, and they were taking the headset off to look at the agenda and put it back on again. It was breaking immersion. It really wasn't working, and I felt that we were using tech for the sake of using tech rather than to actually solve a problem. So what I developed was what you have in front of us now, which is in PowerPoint. So in room 1, you have the commander sat down at the desk with their tactical coordination agenda, and in the other room then you have all the trainers with this, and we share this into a Teams meeting they're viewing. So in here, Dave, if you want to just click on a couple of people's faces, as they then get to a point in the agenda where they say, for instance, right, let's look at people at risk. I in the other room will put on the yellow boxes for people putting their hands up in the virtual environment. And then when they go, okay, Dean from Highways, go ahead. One of us will then start voicing that person. And what that allows us to do is we can have a TCG of 12, 15 people, and two or three of us can voice all of those different people. So you get an experience. We can turn mic. You can see turn mics on and off in there as well. That's all built in PowerPoint. I just took screenshots of the XVR avatars, put them into PowerPoint, and then just went into a Teams meeting, cropped out bits from the Teams meeting, and put them in there. And then I've got loads of triggers set up. It's a little bit finicky to use, which is why David's flicking forward and backwards, because if you click in the wrong place, it advances the slide. It's a little bit finicky to use, but we found it's really been beneficial for the commanders because they get that feel of actually chairing a meeting. They're working through their agenda. They're going to people in order. Okay, you next, you next. They're deciding who they bring in as the chair, but we're kind of who would actually want to talk in this scenario. And like I said, usually we've got other agencies there as well helping us do that, and that's gone down really well. And we've had some commanders who have not done much kind of TCG work, found it really quite, it's challenging because we're putting a lot of pressure on them, we're asking a lot of questions, and we're asking them to be a chair and not a silver at this point, and not make decisions, but just chair the meeting and coordinate that multi-agency response. And that's gone down really well.
Okay, we're getting some great questions in. We'll come to them in a little while.
Okay.
But the other point of this is it does give you a bit of flexibility to work within a script, but not follow a script fully. So
Yeah.
how do you work in terms of making sure that you are able to adapt and respond to get to actually test?
So we have scripts you see on screen. They're not hugely detailed. They're not scripts as in word for word. They are quite bullet pointy. Talk about this, fire concerned about this, ambulance want to talk about this thing. We have the flex to do that because at the moment we're not assessing this as pass or fail yet. This is not a accredited course. I think it could go in that direction in the future. But what it allows us to do, it makes things a little bit more natural, because anyone reading the script, no matter how good, unless you're a really good actor, you're going to struggle to read a script and sound natural. So we allow people to kind of phrase it in their own ways. But also that is, it gives us the flex. If someone says something, I don't know, slightly left field, we can run with that. Let that roll out. XVR gives us the flex to move vehicles around, to send trains over bridges, to set things on fire that weren't already on fire. We have a huge amount of flex in it. So if they want to go down a particular route, well, let's explore that. Let's do that. And let's give them ownership of their learning and allow them to play stuff out in a safe environment. If they go down a bit of a garden path and things start to go wrong, we can just press pause and reset if needs be. We don't have hundreds sets of boots on the ground that are waiting for orders from their boss. It's literally 3 or 4 of us in the classroom. So it does give us that flex that we can respond to what they're doing, which I think from a student perspective gives you that real ownership of, actually, I made this panned out the way it did because of decisions I made, not because of predefined path that the trainers have chosen for me.
We'll show some video of this in a second, but what about the feedback? What sort of impact has this had in the real world?
So as I said, I was a little bit concerned about how is this going to go down, but the feedback has pretty much been universally positive. What you're seeing on screen is a question we asked all of our commanders. This came from a discussion I had with someone from the Home Office, I forget his name, at one of the various conferences I went to, and he's asking, well, how are you going to quantify whether this is effective? What is it actually? How do you say this has worked or hasn't? And the only things I really could come up with, other than looking at evaluation kind of 6 months, a year down the line, was asking our commanders, how confident did you feel before the course about dealing with a major incident? How confident did you feel afterwards? And so that's the results we've had. The average has been about 5 out of 10, ranging down to a 1 of people that perhaps have come from a crime background and aren't used to doing operational policing that much. I'm going to rephrase that. Ops policing, not operational. Crime is still operational. But in police, it tends to be a bit of a split. Then you have people that have had a crime background for a long time and don't generally do. They're the kind of the next wave behind that initial response, whereas this is about initial response. So we had some quite low scores, and then generally the average 8.5 to 9 after the course. One person skewed our average a little bit because they rate themselves 9 out of 10 before they started the course. Having been on operational deployments with that commander, I can confirm to you they're definitely not a 9 out of 10 in terms of their ability, but clearly they're confident. So that has gone down really well. We've had lots of really, really positive feedback from people. You know, we've had, like I said, potentially kind of quite long in the tooth commanders that I really wasn't sure I was going to land with, who've been really, really positive about it and really felt it's beneficial. And the general consensus is they've wanted more VR. Most people have said, that was great, I really enjoyed it, I'd like to do it again. I'd like another go at it, which is what we're looking at doing in the future, potentially with refreshers and coming back and doing different scenarios to then give them a chance to keep doing it and keep refreshing those skills.
And Kane, if you could share your screen, show a bit of video, and we'll talk over that, and I'll put a question to you. We'll try your multitasking ability here. I'll put a question to you here at the same time. So let's see how we get on that. So in terms of this, what were your objectives for the technology, and where did the funding come from in terms of, and I think what I got out of reading this is it wasn't really about, the objective wasn't the technology, technology, but the technology enables improved training.
Yeah. So, and I think that it's probably worth mentioning that the key thing to think about with virtual reality or any tech, to be honest, there is a tendency to go, oh, there's some shiny tech, I want that and I want to use it, without necessarily having a use case as to why. And that, I would suggest, is the wrong way around to do things. We had a very specific use case of, we want commanders to be able to practice commanding incidents without having to set up loads of massive exercises, and we wanted something a bit more than Hydra offered us, or like a tabletop exercise. We wanted something more than that and more immersive to really get them to feel it, and again lining up with recommendation 50. So that's why we used the tech, because it was achieving that for us. So if I play this, what you're seeing here is one of our scenarios. I'm going to walk around the environment. We don't have people walking around when they have headsets on because it can cause motion sickness. But I'm walking around just to give you a bit of a view of it. So they'd be dropped in to this environment. As you can see, there's traffic moving, there's people directing traffic, they've got the public hanging around, you've got multiple casualties to consider, there's people up on the train track filming it, you've got an officer over there that isn't doing anything. So once they're dropped in, then other agencies will start to arrive. Fire will arrive and get out, and the commander will come over to them. Ambulance will arrive, and the commander might go, or we might send them straight to the scene for them to have to say, "Can you come over here? Can we have a chat with you?" So it's a really, once you're in it, and it's difficult to put across on a flat screen how good it is when you're actually in it. It is a different level once you're fully immersed in it and can't see anything but this. But it's been really, really effective.
Thanks. And going back to questions again now, in terms of the approach, what sort of timescales or cost is it to build these sort of immersive environments and the approaches?
Okay, so I'm probably going to be asked by the company not to talk out specific figures in terms of money. However, what I will say is it's a hell of a lot cheaper than people probably think it is. If you're thinking, oh, it's going to be hundreds of £1,000s, it's not. We're talking more in the lower tens thing. It's not a huge thing in the big scheme of things. You're looking at a couple of laptops that need to be gaming specs, so you're probably looking at about £5,000-ish for those, and a headset's about £400. What that gives us, though, is we are totally portable. We can go anywhere, which is really, really good for us because we're such a big force. We can go anywhere we like. In terms of the investment of time, it really depends on having, I would suggest, the right person in your team. If you've got someone who's quite techie like myself, particularly someone who's got a gaming background and particular type of games, strategy games is the things I play a lot, and all of the controls port directly from a strategy game into this. So as an example of the 6 scenarios that we have at the operational level, I picked up XVR having had a couple of days training from the company and probably a day maybe just playing around and pressing some buttons, and then I blocked out 2 weeks in my diary and just shut myself away, and within 2 weeks I built 6 scenarios and all the scripts and everything for those scenarios, the virtual environments and the scripts built for those in 2 weeks. I would probably be able to do it a little bit quicker now, having had a lot more practice. So that's the sort of time frame you look at in terms of that, and then you're looking at the rest of our course, the 2 days of the theory and stuff we had to build as well.
And Kate, there's a lot more questions, and we'll answer some of them, and people can reach out to Mike in our team if they want any more details. But We're looking ahead. What's next for the program, and what's your long-term approach to evaluation going to be looking like?
So next for the program is we're looking at whether we're going to do refresher training. We started branching out, so we initially were doing this just for the frontline inspectors and the superintendents at tactical. We've now then created a smaller version that uses flat screens rather than headsets for our sergeants, so they could get a little bit of input from that. I've also started using it for our new recruits. We're a mixture of sometimes using headsets, also flat screen recordings. I found those have been really good for prompting discussion. So that example there of that RTC, the bus crash, give that to a group of student officers, watch that video, right, now in groups discuss what are your actions, what do you want to consider? And I found it brings up so much extra learning, they think of a lot more things than if I just explained that bus crash to them, because they're seeing stuff on the screen, which is really good. In terms of evaluation, we've evaluated the course initially just after the course, where that's how we got all that feedback. What I'd like to do next is look at further evaluation down the line, a year's time, 2 years' time. Has it been effective? And the only way really we're going to know if it's been effective is hearing from people that have done the course, that have had major incidents and applied the skills. What we have been hearing anecdotally from our partners in our local resilience forum is that the quality of our tactical coordination group chairing has via our local resilience forum. So it's anecdotal, we don't have it written down necessarily, but it sounds like it is starting to have an impact.
I suppose that's really the outcome you're looking for, isn't it, on this? This isn't about the quality of the training, it's the impact the quality of the training has on service delivery and protecting the public. And that is ultimately what we need to do. So, Luke, Kane, we could go on for a lot longer, but we are running out of time and people will start dropping off the call. But if you have something that you think should be highlighted in this year's NPCC Innovation and Digital Summit, and therefore the awards as well, please, the time is now running out. The closing date for nominations is the 31st of May. We need those nominations in. We're having quite a few in already, but this is really an opportunity to make sure that we're signposting the content. So go over to the PDS website. The links are in the chat, or scan the QR code. Those are the categories for this year's awards. The awards night's going to be something spectacular. We'll have 300 people there for the dinner to take part in this. And again, really important, we do start to pre-register people for the summit. We will be allowing even more people to the summit this year. It's the biggest policing summit conference of the year. We'll have 1,150 people there this year. It's free for policing and public sector to attend. So we're really keen we do get you along for that. So there's that reminder of the deadlines. Kane, thank you so much for sharing what you have today. Just a reminder for those who haven't seen the webinars before, you can keep up to date by subscribing to our mailing lists. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, because I want to get our follower count up so I can open up some new functionality. If we get to 1,000 people following us, I can actually turn off adverts and things like that. So please do just click the subscribe button on the YouTube channel where this video will be after we've done the editing on this. So I do thank you very much, and thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to have a little bit of a break in webinars for a while. It is half term, but we'll be back later on in the summer. Thanks for joining us today.